Hey everyone, welcome back to Part Out, where we talk about off-road rigs and accessories. Today we've got a 2018 Jeep Wrangler JLU, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump $35,000 worth of accessories right into this Jeep. Let's get to work. Okay, so one of the first things that we did here is we actually upgraded the air intake system for this. We have an S&B cold air intake, and it's just going to allow a lot more airflow to get into this engine, which is in turn going to give us a little bit more power because we're going to be adding some bigger tires to this Jeep. So any little bit that we can get helps. Okay, so coming around to the back of the Jeep, we have Derek back here wiring up this ARB air compressor. And what this is actually going to do is this is going to go ahead and power the onboard air that we need for airing up our tires and stuff, so when we air down the trail. But more importantly, what it's going to air is our air lockers by ARB that we're going to be installing here on our new Dynatrac axles as soon as they come into the shop. So let me show you real quick how this is actually going to mount into the back. So what we have here is this fabricated sheet of steel that's angled on a 90 degree. So it's going to actually mount right over here onto the hardtop mounting holes here, and it's just going to have a nice flush fit here right behind the seat. What we're doing over here is we're actually changing out the power steering. So we're going from an electrical power steering system to a belt-driven power steering system, and it's actually made by the guys over at PSC. And basically why we're doing that is because we're going to be running 40-inch tires, and when you're crawling and making hard locking turns and stuff, you want to make sure you have a system that's strong enough to actually handle everything that you're going to throw at it. So I mean, we've got everything here. We've got the motor, we've got the pump, and we even have an actual cooler that's going to attach in front of the radiator of this Jeep to help cool things down, because it's going to be going through a lot having to move those 40-inch tires over the rocks and turning them hard lock and all that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing all bolted up, and hopefully we can move on to the next part. Okay, so we got the front and we got the rear axle out of the way. It's looking pretty bare underneath, but we're still waiting for some parts to come in the mail. So while we're waiting on those, we're actually going to focus on the interior as we're wiring up a lot of accessories. And what we're going to use to have it for a switch pad for all the accessories is the new Mopar auxiliary plug-in. So what we're going to use this for is to basically have the switch for our front and rear lights as well as our accessory lights. And not to mention, we're actually going to use that ARB and have that switched up into here as well. So let's get to work. Now, it's been a pretty long week here in the shop. This Jeep has gone through an immense amount of transformation, but the next thing we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the hood of this Jeep to a Fiberworks fiberglass hood. Now, we're going to get three things out of this hood. The first one is lightweight performance. So this hood is going to be a lot lighter, ironically a lot lighter than the aluminum hood that came off. And we're also going to get heat extraction vents because this engine's going to get pretty hot out there on the trail. And also, we're going to get this big old bulge on the hood, and what that's going to enable us to do down the road is we can do some extra engine modifications to this engine, such as superchargers. So to go along with our S&B cold air intake system, having good clean air coming into the engine. We also want a good airflow going out of the engine. So we have an exhaust system here. It's a catback system from the guys over at MBRP, and it's also a high clearance exhaust system. So basically, we're gonna have this exhaust system tucked up above the frame rails. So the frame is always gonna be the first thing to contact the ground before the exhaust. So we have some extra added protection so we don't lose our exhaust out on the trail. Now, as we can see here, the frame is lower, so we're gonna follow it all the way back, and you can see that we're tucked up pretty high. We follow the frame rail design here with the exhaust, and then it tucks out over here at the end for the exhaust tip, and it actually just barely comes just below the rear cross member, but I think we're gonna adjust that so we can get that to be just in line with that. And it's also gonna be a great thing to have for our departure angle for when we're crawling over the rocks. Now, I don't necessarily know how much different of an exhaust note we're gonna do, but after we finish this Jeep, we'll give you a stock exhaust note and the exhaust note from this. So let's move on to the next part. All right, guys, so today's a big day. Our axles have arrived from Dynatrac. So as we take the lid off here on our crate, you can see that we've got some Dynatrac Pro Rock 60s. Now these are gonna allow us to wheel with extreme confidence because we're gonna be able to throw in our 40-inch tires and just wheel them, and we're not even gonna think about any strength issues because these things are definitely gonna get the job done. So let's go ahead and get these on the Jeep. So now that we have the axles out of the box, we have them mounted up to some spare wheels and tires that we have in the shop. And we're actually gonna have this just to kind of roll the axles around as we need to get them mocked up to the Jeep where we want them to be. But in order to get them mocked up where we want them to be, we have to have our suspension hooked up. So now we're moving on to our suspension components, which means we're gonna be installing this pretty badass BDS 6-inch long arm kit. And how that's gonna work is we're gonna have these beefy brackets that are gonna mount right up here on the inside of the frame. They're gonna allow us to have 4 control arms that are long arm style. So that's gonna give this Jeep a lot of down travel as we're going over the rocks and stuff. So we're gonna be able to have a good articulation setup for this Jeep. Seeing as how this JL was a sport model, it had the sport fender flares on it, which didn't have as much ground clearance as the Rubicon ones. So we actually went to Quadratec, ordered up a set of the Mopar Performance fenders, which are an inch higher in clearance. And since our hood was sent out for paint, we figured we might as well color match these fenders as well. We sent those out to paint too. So we've got them now, we're gonna throw them on the Jeep. Let's get going. Now we're gonna load this Jeep up with a lot of armor, and all of our armor is coming from JCR Off-Road. Now right here I've got their stubby bumper. On the back we've got their tire carrier bumper that's gonna be holding our 40-inch tire. And also we're gonna have some rock sliders built by those guys as well. And it's all gonna work great when we're out on the trail.
Nate, make sure you make my muscles look big for the photo.
I got you. right, so while the armor is getting installed on the Jeep, our drive shafts came in from JLU. Now these shafts are going to be a 1310 setup, and we're going to have one going to the front axle, one to the rear, and they're going to be paired up to a Rubicon transfer case that we put in the Jeep, and that's going to give us a 4-to-1 low range ratio. All right, so let's move on to the wheels and tires for this Jeep. So what we have here are the Nitto Trail Grapplers. These are going to be a 40-inch by 13.5, and we have them wrapped around some Dirty Life wheels with real bead locks. It's important to have a real bead lock because when you're off on the trail, you air down. You don't risk having the tire fall off the bead of the wheel. So we have those on there. We have them color matched to the Jeep, so it has a really nice finished look to it, and I'm really excited to see these things get on the Jeep.
This is great on your back.
Here it is, everybody. A big bad orange JLU Jeep Wrangler ready to tackle the trails. So up front we have the JCR front stubby bumper paired up with some Baja Designs light pods, and inside the bumper we have the Warn Winch. It's a VR10S series, so it's going to have that synthetic rope, and then on the end of that synthetic rope we have the Factor 55 flat link adapter, so that way we can have safe winching at all times. So behind it we obviously have the 3.6 engine from Jeep, and we have it wrapped with a brand new Fiberworks fiberglass hood with heat extraction and extra room for extra modifications down the road. One of the engine modifications though that we have already done to this engine is we've done the S&B cold air intake, and that's going to help give this engine a little bit better breathing as far as getting more airflow to get through it. Because obviously we got to move some bigger tires, because we've got some 40-inch Nitto Trail Grappler tires on here that are beefy, awesome looking, and not to mention they're going to be great for trail use. But we have these tires wrapped around some Dirty Life wheels with bead locks on them, and then these wheels are attached to some Dynatrac Pro Rock 60 axles that are locked front and rear with some ARB lockers. Now, to get the clearance to fit these tires, axles, and all that, we actually have some Rubicon fender flares that we subbed in for the factory ones that came with the Sport model, because the Rubicon ones actually give us an extra 1.5 inches to, I almost think, 2 inches of clearance as far as the actual height goes. But the actual real clearance comes from this prototype BDS 6-inch long arm system that has Fox shocks all the way around. This is a really awesome setup, and we're really looking forward to testing it all out. So coming around to the side, we have more JCR armor. This is the JCR rock slider setup that they have. It's got the actual body cladding as well as the full-on rock sliders themselves. But what's kind of neat about these sliders is on the front and the rear we've got lights that are integrated with them, as well as a high lift jack mount, so that way in case we happen to pop a tire or something on the trail, we can jack the Jeep up from the side right there and have no issues. Granted, if you have a full-on jack system where you can actually get to the frame, that's probably more recommended. If you're caught in a pinch, having a high lift jack and having this mount right here is probably going to be the safest bet you're going to have. Coming around to the rear of the Jeep, we have a hardtop on the Jeep now. We also have a rear tire carrier as well as bumper setup, and it's all made by the guys over at JCR Off-Road. It's not exactly spec for a 40-inch tire to be hanging off of it, but we're going to push the envelope on it and see what happens. Going into the trunk of the Jeep, we have a Dometic fridge, obviously keep all of our drinks and all that stuff cold. And then over here we have the ARB air compressor, and that's going to be used to air up our tires when we air them down for the trail, as well as provide the air pressure for our lockers. Now we also did the high clearance exhaust system from MBRP, and basically that exhaust will dip out right here at the cross member, so it's going to have a nice, very high clearance system. We're ditching that muffler that hangs down on the stock JLs, and if you want to hear the exhaust note for this system, let's take a look. To go along with the rest of our driveline components that had to go into the axles, we had to upgrade the drive shafts, and we went with JE Real drive shafts, and those things are a lot beefier than the factory ones, as well as the length had to be a little bit adjusted as well. As well as going with new steering for the front of this Jeep. We had to turn to PSC steering to upgrade the steering to a hydro assist setup, so that way we can turn these 40-inch tires with just our thumb. No issue, no problems. Now as far as the transfer case goes for this Jeep, we actually subbed out the stock one from the Sport model, and we put in a Rubicon transfer case that's going to give us that 4-to-1 low range ratio. Hope you guys enjoyed this video of us building up this Jeep Wrangler. We really like the way it turned out. It's a pretty cool build. If you guys have any questions on any of the products that we put on this, make sure you leave a comment down below and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We'll see you guys next time.